This is it. My final paper of junior year was turned in. Now I was left to confront the fact that I only have 1 year before I'm responsible for the rest of my life. But unlike my peers, I'm not going through an existential collapse, wondering what I will do with the rest of my life, because I already know. I want to be a filmmaker, but I didn't know how to. I had so many questions. What would I do as a filmmaker? How do I become a filmmaker? It seemed that the more questions I had, the fewer answers I found, and I wasn't satisfied. So I bought a plane ticket to Bozeman, Montana to begin making Touching Magic, being an independent artist. I arrived in Bozeman during May 2017 with a cute idea for a film about independent filmmaking, but that's all it was, an idea. Ideas don't make for compelling movies, and I needed a story. To help figure out how I was going to find that story, I sat down with some independent filmmakers.
Picking a story, it's important because I don't know if this idea is going to work, really. I think it'll work, but I don't know.
Usually the initial piece is always, can we actually get money for something? And when you do, that's when you start working on it.
Like the main thing that I tap into in myself, am I on fire? Does this project light me on fire? Is there something in me that's burning to do this, that wants to give birth to this thing, that's willing to go through all of the hardships and challenges that every project has? Am I willing to burn for this?
I was beginning to feel out my story now. I planned all of these interviews because I was curious about what an independent artist does. Surely someone else is as well. Surely they would enjoy a story about what makes an independent artist tick. So that's what I pursued. First things first, why did they choose to become independent artists?
Who can afford to do this work, essentially? Who can actually afford, on a very real level, to do this work? Not very many people. And the people who can afford to do it are people who either want to live the life of a starving artist or people who have some other source of income or wealth that enables them to do this as a kind of hobby.
There's a huge difference between being a filmmaker on the weekends and being a filmmaker. Because if it's just this thing you do on the side, you just don't spend the time on it. You're not challenged. So initially the goal was to make a living at it and not take another job.
I tried a bunch of different things, and along the way I started working in a music store, and then I started teaching music. Ultimately felt like there was, that I wanted to settle into one thing all the time, or as it's my primary livelihood. And that's when I made the decision to pursue music really as an avocation, as full-time work.
All of these people are fulfilling their passions and sustaining themselves financially. This led me to wonder, what are their goals?
So every day is different. I think my primary attention now is I need to make sure that I get paying work to survive. But I'm always making sure that every week I'm moving forward on the different passion projects that I have.
I think that anyone who can find a career that allows them to do something that's personally fulfilling and that constantly delivers new and exciting and interesting experiences and allows for growth is an incredibly lucky person. So I consider myself very rich and very fortunate.
Those are their goals, but how do they push themselves to achieve those goals? And how do they keep from getting artistically stuck or keep from doing the same thing every day on repeat?
I did come to places in my life where I was felt like I had reached a dead end creatively, and then had to break free of some things that I was doing So I have at times stepped away from things that were maybe commercially rewarding in order to choose more artistic satisfaction, and still do that to this day.
That is a normal part of the process, and it's a normal part of establishing anything. I think any kind of career, any passion, any path, you're gonna fall down. But if you don't get up and you don't learn why you fell down, you'll just keep falling down again and again and again, and you'll get stuck. So I think the important thing is really learning from where you make mistakes. And I wouldn't call this a mistake, but I think it's important to just be is to not get arrogant, to stay humble. And that's something I work with too. But just to recognize that there's always improvement.
This question of how you prevent yourself from hitting a plateau and becoming comfortable where you are and not growing as a journalist or as a storyteller or filmmaker or whatever, I think it really comes down to what you're made of and the type of person that you are. And I know in my life and the people who I know who work in this field, I don't know anyone who's happy where they are and doesn't want to grow and doesn't want to learn. I don't know a single person like that.
I like working with a lot of new people. I like working with new folks and people who are better than me and more talented than me, because then I can learn from them. And I'm always asking for feedback on things that I do, and from people I trust who would tell me if something sucks or if something gets boring. And with collaboration, to know where your line is, like, okay, no, it has to be, I'm not going to compromise on this mood. But as much as possible when I collaborate, I try to remember and remind myself that I don't know shit. And if I trust the people I'm collaborating with, and I can let go of my work and my ideas and my opinions, then it becomes this playground where we can create together.
I'd finally conducted all of my interviews and collected all the wisdom I could from each artist. So I was basically a professional, right? Not even close. In fact, when I sat down to edit this film, I didn't even know where to start. So I guess that's something only experience can fix. As I begin my journey into becoming an independent artist, I want to leave you with the 3 remarks that had the biggest impact on me and that I will remember for the rest of my life.
I was raised as a young journalist following my mentors and heroes to believe that it's not about me. It's about the story. It's about the subjects. It's about the issue. And I am an important part of that as the conduit between all of these disparate facts and people and the audience, but it's not about me. And what I see in a lot of filmmakers and photographers, and even to some extent writers these days with their social media presence and with all of that, is that there's a very clear focus on them and their brand. And I find that very troubling because honestly, I don't really care about them. I care about the story.
The saying that comes to mind is that the goal is to be on the path. And what I mean by that is that there are no outcomes that are guaranteed. There's no guarantee that you'll have your job tomorrow. Not being successful for me is not an option, because I don't want to go have a real job. I don't want to go work in restaurants again. I don't want to go get a job at McDonald's or have a part-time job to make ends meet. Because as an artist, you have to be committed to being on the path, and sometimes you stay with the path instead of thinking about the goal.
You're pulling this stuff out of thin air, and that's really cool. And that's just, I don't know, film for me is like the closest I can get to touching magic. I wanted to be an astrophysicist when I was really young. I think because of the magic of the unknown, of black holes. Like, what's on the other side of a black hole? Is there something? What's out there? And in a way, film is a similar exploration. Like, what's beyond the reaches of my mind? What can I find? It's like an adventure.